Hey, what's up you guys? Today I'm doing my 2020 stats video, so I have lots of fun pie charts for us to look at. I really enjoy putting these together. I think all this kind of data is really interesting to look at and kind of reflect upon, and there's some things that I thought I'd done quite well and then I realised that I actually didn't, but we'll get to all of that. I read 115 books this year, so I'm really happy with that. I never expected to read this much. My Goodreads goal was 60 books, so I've almost doubled that. And obviously I don't think I'll be able to repeat that next year. I'm really expecting my reading to slow down next year, but I have really enjoyed my reading this year anyway. So let's start talking about the stats. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and please subscribe. And also, if you watch my channel normally, I'm kind of at a different angle because the way I was sitting before was not comfortable, but it really doesn't matter to anyone apart from me, but I'm just weirded out by looking at my screen right now. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and let's just get started. So first of all, I'm just going to go over some comparisons. The very first book that I read in 2020 was The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, and the final book that I read this year was The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. So obviously these are two very different genres by two very different authors, but I thought that was quite interesting. The highest rated book that I read this year was, on Goodreads I should say, is Heartstopper Volume 3, which has 4.56 stars. And I honestly do not think that Heartstopper deserves to be the highest rated book that I've read this year, but I digress. It was the same in my stats video for the first 100 books that I read since joining BookTube. Heartstopper Volume 1 was the top of that. I don't know. They are cute, but they're not Anyway, the lowest rated book that I read on Goodreads was Stancliffe's Hotel by Charlotte Bronte, and this has 2.7 stars, and I understand why this is the lowest rated, to be honest. It was part of Charlotte's juvenilia, so she wrote it when she was still young. It was never meant to be published. It's only published now because of who she is. It's not very good, to be honest. The longest book that I read this year was The Shadow Rising, which was 1,031 pages. And this is book 4 in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, and it is the biggest book I've ever read in my life. It's kind of ruined the series for me in a way because I'm I don't know if I want to stick to a series with all these big long books, 1,000 pages a month. I don't know if I want to do it, to be honest. But anyway, the shortest book I read was We Jace You a Clary Christmas. I hate that name so much. And this was just a ebook that Cassandra Clare put out full of small extras from the Shadowhunter series, some different things written from different characters' perspectives and stuff like that. It was cute and it was only 65 pages. The most popular book that I read this year on Goodreads was The Hunger Games, which has 8 million shelved. I don't know what that's I guess over 8 million people have read The Hunger Games basically on Goodreads. And the least popular is A Death at Dawn by Gabrielle Gray. This was a self-published book that I read. It was the very first self-published book I ever read. I've talked about it quite a lot. It was an epic fantasy. The author is a black woman and it is really good. I will leave the link to it in the description because I really enjoyed it and I wish everyone would check it out. It only has 13 people read it on Goodreads, or 13 shelved, whatever that means. But I highly recommend it, so I will leave the link to the Amazon thing in the description for that. The oldest book I read this year was Romeo and Juliet, which was published in 1595. This is by William Shakespeare. And the newest book I read was We Jace You a Clary Christmas, which came out in December 2020. I really hate that name. My most read author of the year was Cassandra Clare, and I read 11 books by her. So this was the Mortal Instruments series, the Infernal Devices series, and then that Christmas book that I'm not going to say the name of again because I hate the name. My second most read author was Stephanie Meyer. I have 7 books because I read the entire Twilight saga. Then Rick Riordan and James Dashner both have 5 books each, and this is the Percy Jackson series and the Maze Runner series. So moving on to the pie charts, if we look at the gender of the 65 authors I read this year, 34 of them were female, 30 of them were male, and 1 was non-binary, and I am really happy with this. That's pretty much a 50-50 split between male and female. I remember my 100 stats video, it was much more male, so I'm really glad I've got that to basically 50-50, and I'm actually really impressed because it wasn't something I prioritized or actively tried to do, it just naturally happened, so I think that's pretty cool. The countries these authors came from, so this is obviously very not balanced. 35 of the authors were from the USA and 14 of them are from England. I said in my last stats video I wanted to try and read from more countries. Obviously, I have some more work to do with that. I really, next year, want to try and read some other countries. I really don't want so much of my reading to be from the USA and from England, to be honest, as well. So the other countries I read 2 from Australia, 1 from Ireland, 1 from Japan, 1 from Mexico, 1 from the Netherlands. This was Anne Frank, who technically was never actual citizen of the Netherlands, but she wanted to be before she died, so I felt like it was the right place to put her. I wasn't going to put her in Germany, and I wasn't going to put her as like stateless, because that's just not nice, so I felt like Netherlands was like the right place to put her. 1 from Nigeria, 1 from North Korea, 1 from Russia, 1 from Singapore, and 4 from Scotland. Next year I want to read much more Scottish authors. I would love if I read more Scottish authors than English authors, but we will have to wait and see. I have read, to be fair, from quite a lot of different countries, but they're all like, 1. I would like to read from even more different countries, but also maybe go right into like the literature of a few different countries and read like, quite a few different books from Nigeria, quite a few different books from Mexico. I don't know, just like expand and basically not read as much authors from the USA. The age category of the books I have read this year, I'm quite happy with this. I read 2 children's books, which were both by Roald Dahl. I read 7 middle grade books, which were the 5 Percy Jackson books, and I'm pretty sure I put Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and Adventures of Tom Sawyer under middle grade. Young adult 42 and adult 64. I'm really happy with this. I would always want to read more adult than young adult, but I do really enjoy young adult. I don't have anything against it. I know some people think it's not as good as like adult and stuff, but I just think they're fun, and it breaks up the reading. See, if I'm reading all adult books, I read like a lot slower, but if I read like adult, young adult, then I get through more books, so I am happy with that. And if this pie chart stayed the exact same next year, I would be happy with that. The format that I read this year was 5 audiobooks, 21 ebooks, and 89 physical books. I had never listened to any audiobooks before this year, and I'm still on the fence how I feel about them. I've had some good experiences, I've had some bad experiences. I've realised that I can basically only listen to an audiobook if I'm doing something that's like mindless. So if I am balloon hunting on Animal Crossing, which is just running up and down the beach, like without any dialogue, anything, just running up and down the beach, I can do that. I listened to The Only Good Indians while driving home. It was like a 4-hour drive, so I had it on times 2 and I listened to almost the entire book. And because I was driving on just motorways, I didn't have to think about where I was going. It was like perfect. But if I tried to listen to audiobook, I listened to The Dragon Republic, the second book in the Popular series, while I was going to the gym every day. That just did not work because I just had too many distractions. My mind wanders so much, like so easily. So that doesn't really work. But I actually am kind of enjoying audiobooks. The more I listen to them, the more I'm getting used to them. Ebooks and physical books, I always prefer physical books, but I don't have anything against ebooks. I have quite a lot of ebooks on my Kindle right now because I just keep downloading ones that are like 99p, even though I don't want to support Amazon, but they're good deals. Oh, it's modern life. But I'm pretty happy with this, to be honest. Next year, hopefully, I'm going to travel. If things go back to normal, if the world goes back to normal, like I hope it does, I will get to travel, and then I will be reading a lot of ebooks. But for now, while I'm at home, I do prefer physical books. The genres I have read are pretty much quite an even split. So obviously, fantasy is a lot bigger. So fantasy has 37, and then dystopian is the second biggest, and this is 12, and that's because the Maze Runner series and also the Hunger Games series are all dystopian, and dystopian and fantasy are kinda like dystopian is fantasy. So fantasy does take up like almost half this pie chart, but as for all the other ones, it's pretty evenly split. There's 11 historical fiction, 7 horror, 2 modernism, which is Virginia Woolf, who I'm never reading ever again. Mysteries 4, non-fiction 6. I know non-fiction isn't really a category, but this is the first year I ever read non-fiction, and I'm pretty happy with reading 6 of them. It's not something I really want to prioritise going forward. Like, if one sounds really interesting to me, then I will read it, but it's not like something I'm really drawn towards. Paranormal romance, this is just the Twilight books, really. Poetry 1, I'm not really into poetry. I'm not going to prioritise that. I don't care about poetry, to be honest. Romance 12, and then sci-fi 7. I quite want to read some more sci-fi next year. I really like sci-fi. I know that sci-fi and fantasy kind of come hand in hand. So I would like to read more sci-fi because I do enjoy it when I read it. I just never really pick them up as much. It's not my go-to. The length of the books I read, this is what I would expect, to be honest. Under 100 there was only 3, then 14 to 100 to 199, 21 to 299. Not gonna read all these numbers, but as you can see, I do prefer books that are like 200 to 400 pages. I would love it. Every single book was like 200 to 400 pages. That is like the dream mark to me. I actually read quite a few that were in the 500 range, which I was surprised about. And then obviously I read one book that was over 1,000. I found it to be a bit of a chore. I don't know if I really want to continue that. That's what I'm really struggling with right now, going forward with my plans for next year. I did really want to continue Wheel of Time, and right now I'm like, there's so many other books I want to read, and like 1,000 pages takes up like almost half my month. So I don't know. But I'm happy with this, and it's pretty much what I was expecting, to be honest. The books I owned, did I read them? So out of the 115 books I read, 93 of them I owned at the time. Some of them obviously I've now unhauled, and then 22 were no. Preferably I would like this to be a little bit more no, because I do want to use my library more, but my library was shut for almost the entire of this year, so I was actually buying a lot more books than I would have liked to. But I do like to use my library if I can, unless it's a book that I know I do really want to own. If I'm only going to read the ones, I would prefer to get it from the library. The publication date of the books I have read, this one is kind of interesting. So I read a lot more modern books from 2010 onward than I would have expected. I actually read 13 books came out in 2020, and I could not tell you what they are off the top of my head, because I did not realise I read that many 2020 books, but I surprised myself here. 1950 to 1999 is kind of my second biggest area. These ones are the ones that, like, some of them are modern classics, some of them are just books from that time period. It really depends on what you ask and what the book kind of is, and every book stands on its own. I would like to read more classics next year. I would like my 1800s to 1949 pie chart to maybe make up even half of the overall books I read, but I'm not going to like pressure myself. I do have a lot of plans for classics next year, and I'm more excited about the classics that I'm reading next year than I am for the more recent books, but we'll just see how things go. And then there's quite a lot of books from 2000 to 2009. That's because I was reading all those nostalgic like YA series, but going forward I'm kind of over them. I don't have as many to read anymore. As for how books were published, 106 of the books I read were traditionally published and 9 were self-published. I'm quite happy with this. I would like to read more self-published next year. I really want to make it a goal to read at least one every single month. So if this is on 12 next year, perfect. If it's above 12, even better. And that's like one of my main goals for next year. I think it's quite easy to achieve, to be honest. As for if books were a reread, I could not read that. 18 of them were yeses and 97 were no. So the yeses were the 3 Maze Runner books, the original trilogy, The Hunger Games, Twilight, and I think there was a couple random books, but overall I don't reread much, and I really want to actually do some more rereads. So January, I was going to do a January TBR, but now I don't know if I'm going to bother, but January 2021, I'm just rereading some of my favourite books I have not really read. Most of them are from 2019, and mostly from when I very first started BookTube, so I've never really done proper reviews for them, but I'm excited to do that. And then star rating, I had a really good year. As you can see, the majority of my books were 4 stars. I had quite a lot of 5 stars, very few. The 2 unrated ones were The Diary of Anne Frank, which I didn't feel right rating, and Emily Bronte's poetry book. I don't know poetry very well. I can't really appreciate poetry, so I didn't want to rate it. So those 2 are unrated. And to be honest, probably some of the 3 stars deserve 2 stars, but I don't know. I'm quite a nice reviewer, I think. I don't like giving bad reviews. Even if the author's dead for like 100 years, I still feel bad. I'm like, this book has some literary merit, but I don't know. I just feel like, I don't know. I'm always honest, but when it comes to actual stars, I end up giving 3 stars probably too much. Finally, for the type of books I read, 98 of these were novels, which I'm not surprised about. That is like the main thing I'm interested in. 2 were children's novels. That was the 2 Roald Dahl books. There was 1 manga, which was one of the Death Note volumes. I keep saying every year I'm going to read Death Note, and I never do. I read 7 short story collections, I read one poetry book, 3 webcomics, which was the Heartstopper stuff. I just read them online. And then I read 3 plays. I read 2 William Shakespeare ones, and I read The Crucible, which I actually love The Crucible, but I don't like William Shakespeare, I've come to realise. And I'm not really going to prioritise plays going forward. I don't have a problem with this pie chart. If this was the same next year, like some of the other ones, I would not be annoyed at all. I really just do prefer novels. I also put novellas into novels because some novellas are like the same length as other ones that are just called novels, and it would just get too complicated, so I just put everything down as novels. So 2020, as I've said, was a great reading year for me. Hopefully next year it will be the same, and if you want to find out if it is, please hit the subscribe button, and also if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you don't have anything to comment but you want to let me know you're there, write anything you want, just write a smiley face or write the word hi, honestly, or leave an emoji, whatever. I have really struggled to comment on people's videos recently, so I know how it feels. But if you enjoyed this video, obviously, like I've already said, leave a like, and I will see you in my next one.